Jesus is moving through Galilee, surrounded by a dense, chaotic, and pressing crowd, pushing his way through the dust. He is on a desperate, time-sensitive mission. The daughter of a local synagogue ruler is dying, and every second matters as he heads toward their house. Approaching him quietly from behind, moving through that exact same crush of people, is an unseen woman. For 12 years, she has suffered from a continuous, abnormal hemorrhage. Under Old Covenant Levitical law, a condition like this carries an absolute prohibition on physical contact. If she touches anyone, they become ceremonially unclean. Reaching out to a rabbi on his way to heal a dying child means she risks instantly defiling him and disqualifying him from his mission. This intersection brings together two people living under the shadow of death to collide with the source of life. This diagram shows the ancient purity system established in Leviticus. Sacred space was anchored behind concentric circles of static boundary walls, strictly guarding the Holy of Holies at the center. Within this system, ritual impurity acted as an outward expanding, infectious force. It operated strictly in a single direction, from the unclean to the clean. When the bleeding woman reaches through the crowd and touches Jesus, the expected outcome is that her defilement will immediately flow into him. Instead, the impurity completely halts. Jesus is not defiled. He never stops to undergo the mandated ritual washings, and he never offers a purification sacrifice after this contact. This encounter establishes the reality of the mobile sanctuary. The ancient spiritual physics of defilement are permanently reversed. To trace exactly how that reversal works, we evaluate the precise legal weight of Leviticus 15, which governs continuous bodily discharges. For 12 years, 4,380 consecutive days, this woman has been classified as ceremonially defiled, or tameh. That classification dictates total exclusion from temple worship and complete removal from community visibility. Domestically, it requires the mandatory severance of all physical contact. Anything she sits on and anyone she touches becomes unclean. The reason for this severe isolation is anchored in Leviticus 17, which states that the life, the nephesh, of the flesh is in the blood. This animation illustrates the theological reality of her condition. Her continual blood loss symbolizes the persistent, unstoppable draining away of life itself. Her illness is a living manifestation of decreation. She is a picture of a fallen world experiencing the slow entropy of mortality. Approaching Jesus, she reaches for a highly specific physical object, the crespedon on the hem of his outer robe. In the Greek Septuagint, crespedon translates the Hebrew word tzitzit, the covenant tassels commanded by Yahweh in Numbers 15. Worn with a cord of blue, these tassels functioned as visual anchors for Israel, signifying complete and perfect obedience to the Torah. Her touch represents an act of exact theological alignment with the one who fulfills that covenant. This maps Old Covenant contact physics. A line points from an unclean object to a clean person, transmitting defilement. At her touch, we see the messianic reversal. The transmission reverses, flowing from the incarnate Holy One to the unclean person, imparting immediate holiness. Instead of receiving pollution, uncreated restorative power, dynamis, surges outward from Christ as an offensive, advancing force. Sacred space is no longer anchored behind static stone walls. Wherever the mobile sanctuary walks, holy ground arrives and pollution is completely overwhelmed. To isolate the exact mechanics of this spiritual physics, we analyze the grammatical structure of Matthew chapter 9. This syntax tree maps verse 21, isolating the woman's internal psychological state right before the miracle occurs. The verb elegane, meaning she kept saying, is written in the imperfect continuous tense. This continuous internal dialogue shows that she was actively reauthoring her perception of reality long before she made physical contact. Moving forward to verse 22, the text captures the exact moment Jesus forces the entire moving crowd to a dead halt. The narrative pivots on the adversative conjunction de. This small word acts as a central structural hinge, physically turning the sentence and Jesus around. This single conjunction converts what was meant to be an anonymous, private physical touch into a highly public, legal transaction. Contrasting her continuous internal thought, the final verb describing her healing is esothe, saved or made whole. It is an instantaneous aorist passive action. Messiah's touch operates entirely outside of medical time. His sovereign command produces a completed new creation reality, requiring no gradual process. Jesus had to stop the crowd. If she slipped away unnoticed, she'd remain legally vulnerable to community suspicion and lingering shame. We evaluate this interaction using a heavenly courtroom analysis framework to understand the spiritual legalities of chronic affliction. For the previous 12 years, the accuser operated as a spiritual prosecutor in the unseen realm. He utilized the mandates of Leviticus 15 as an unyielding legal indictment, enforcing a sentence of strict isolation and depersonhood upon her. The courtroom proceeding begins when Jesus turns to look at her. The divine gaze instantly restores her image-bearing visibility before the entire crowd. Then comes the first half of his royal decree, tharseo, take courage. This acts as a direct legal command that dismantles the spirit of fear. The second half of the decree is the gater, or daughter. This is the only time in Matthew where Jesus directly addresses a woman with this title. It is not a casual term of endearment. It is a regal, authoritative title of covenant adoption. This verbal decree permanently revokes her disease-defined identity and legally annuls the accuser's standing before heaven and earth. Zooming out from this individual miracle, we examine the broader narrative architecture of Matthew chapter 9. Operating precisely beneath the surface of the text is a structural design known as the typology of the two 12s. This diagram reveals the connection. The 12 years of the woman's hemorrhage perfectly mirror the 12-year lifespan of the dying girl waiting at the end of the road. This synchronization creates a simultaneous dual restoration. Together, these two females represent covenant Israel in its totality. Chronically unclean, exhausted, and facing impending death, they are both being fully restored by the Shepherd King. This leads to the final theological contrast of the narrative, the two distinct flows of blood. The woman's 12-year hemorrhage represents the physical manifestation of life continually draining into the dust, marking the entropy of the fall. This points directly forward to the voluntary, victorious, and once-for-all shedding of Christ's blood on Calvary. This same spiritual physics, where holiness consumes defilement rather than being corrupted by it, reaches its limit at Calvary. There, the source of life enters the domain of the curse to dismantle it from within. The mobile sanctuary's movement through Galilee demonstrates the mechanics of a coming new creation, where divine holiness reverses the entropy of death until it is destroyed forever.